I believe that disclosure is one of the strongest things that can happen in the public sphere. And 2 decades ago, the Federal Communications Act had this provision, Section 317, requiring the on-air identification of sponsors of all advertisements, political and commercial. And then when the FCC wrote the regulation, they said that political ads must, quote, fully and fairly disclose the true identity of the person or persons or corporation, committee, association, or other unincorporated group or entity, end of quote, that pays for them. Well, as you know, as a result of a Supreme Court decision, we have been beset upon in the political sphere with an avalanche of undisclosed, unlimited money from sources that the public does not know where the political communication, either arguing for or against a particular candidate, comes from. Indeed, in the Citizens United Supreme Court decision that set off this crazy contortion of campaign finance law, there was an interesting statement by the court, joined by 8 of 9 justices, that says disclosure is the less restrictive alternative to more comprehensive speech regulations. That would indicate that the court is looking approvingly of disclosure. Okay, you've got the statutory power. We don't have to do what we failed by 1 vote with 59 votes, and we didn't get 60 votes 4 years ago to have the Disclose Act. You have the power. So I'd like to know what each one of you thinks about implementing the statutory authority that you have for all of that undisclosed money that is hiding behind the Committee for God, Mother, and Country, and yet it is fueled by various special interests.
So, Senator, thank you. It's a very important issue, and I agree with you that disclosure is a First Amendment-friendly, powerful tool in this space. Last year, and this was a contentious decision, we approved new rules that required broadcasters to put online the information that they now receive about political ads, and they do receive a significant amount of information. By a 3-2 vote, we adopted those rules, and that started rolling out before the last election, and it will continue. And part of what I think we're obliged to do now is look at the effect of that as it rolls out, consider the kinds of issues that you're raising, and determine what, if any, next steps are appropriate and necessary.
Well, the statute passed 2 years ago requires on-air identification of all sponsors of all advertisements. And then the FCC rule that implemented the statute says, quote, fully and fairly disclose the true identity of the person, talking about political ads, or persons or corporation, committee, association, or other unincorporated group or other entity. So does that mean that you're a no vote?
No, Senator, I think there are requirements that are in place on disclosing, including on air, the sponsors of ads. I think you're suggesting that we look at going more deeply into who the actual funders are. I think that's a very important issue and something that we should look at.
I'm talking about the enforcement of the FCC's rules that fleshed out the statute that was passed. Would you indulge me, Mr. Chairman, to just see what the rest of the commissioners say?
Thank you, Senator, for the opportunity to comment on this. And you're absolutely right. Disclosure and transparency are good and curative in many, many contexts. And as the chairman pointed out, about a year ago, we had a vote. Actually, there was it was only 3 of us at the time at the commission. There was a 3-0 vote in part and a 2-to-1 vote in the other part. I dissented against the disclosure of broadcast rates, how much it costs, because I'm concerned about collusion. So we want to encourage transparency. At the same time, we need to balance that against what is the right forum. Should that be the Federal Election Commission or the Federal Communications Commission? Should broadcasters end up being the enforcers of political campaigns and these other groups that are formed? Do we put the burden only on them? So I think there are a lot of equities to balance here as well. There are a lot of groups that get formed in this context of elections and public issues ads. So where should all the burden go? The money flows to new media, it flows to old media, it flows to a lot of different places in old media, not just broadcast licensees. So we need to be careful to balance.
There's no balance here. It says requires on-air identification of the sponsors of advertisements. So does that mean you're a no?
Well, and there are already both FEC rules and FCC rules regarding these sorts of things. So, you know, all the mouse print and the quick, fast talking at the end of ads covers a lot of that.
We just came through more than $1 billion, probably $2 to $3 billion of outside ads from these undisclosed sources. So this is not a matter of, it's not an issue in front of the public. It's here. It's right now. What about you, Ms. Clyburn?
Senator, I will look forward to working with you if there is anything that we have or have not done or that you identify as deficient. We moved a long way in moving the information that stations were previously keeping on premises to the airwaves. It made the opportunity for investigative work and the like more clear. Again, if there is anything that we left out, if there is any I not dotted, I look forward to further engagement with you.
So that's a maybe. How about you, Ms. Worthensell?
I will make it easy. Yes, I agree with you. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we should look at our rules, make sure they're updated under Section 317, and make sure that the filings that we receive are as transparent as they need to be.
Mr. Pai.
And thanks, Senator. I share my colleagues' value of openness and transparency in all phases of our work. One of the issues I think that we're confronting is that Section 73.1212 of our rules, which implements Section 317 of the Act, requires the disclosure of persons, committees, corporations, or other entities that are sponsoring the advertisement. So there's a question under our current rules whether that requires the disclosure of all the sponsors who are underlying the actual sponsors. And so there are also some practical considerations, as Commissioner McDowell pointed out in a 30-second television ad. Would you have to identify every single sponsor of, who is funding the corporation or the outside committee? One of the other things I would like to bring to your attention is this September 2012 GAO report, which studied this issue in some depth, and it pointed out that regardless of what Congress does with respect to the law and what we do with respect to our rules, it wouldn't hurt for us to update some of our FCC guidance to broadcasters. Some of that guidance hasn't been updated since 1963, and it still talks about the fact that the expensive kinescope print that you use to produce a film might warrant sponsorship identification. And so I think there are things that we could do internally to provide greater clarity for the industry.
That sounds like a maybe yes, in which case, need one more vote. Need 3 votes. Now, this is of great consequence to the political sphere of how it was influenced by undisclosed, unlimited money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.